Hi there, I am Black Bright, broadcasting from the east of England. Welcome to my channel. For those of you who are passing by for the first time, you're welcome to click the thumbs up, the thumbs down. You're welcome to subscribe and interact with my subscribers. What am I talking about today? First of all, I'm Dark Shades. I do run a channel called Black Bright that deals with social issues and political issues and legislation and immigration, stuff like that. This channel has just recently been set up last week, which I think was the beginning of September. Dark Shade, the counselling segment of it, has just been started up. And it's not really a counselling channel per se. It's more to do with issues that we face day by day and different ways to look at it. I try to give you a different perspective to help you navigate life, I guess, and circumstances and relationships. So, with that background, we're going to talk about how effective is your communication. Not even that. How do you speak to be understood? In this crazy world that we live in today, it's even more harder to be understood. We have people of different ethnicities, people with different accents, people with different life experiences. We have people who, I guess we have different genders. I mean, they have said that men are from Mars and women are from Venus. So you can imagine how difficult it is to be understood. And it's even more frustrating when you've spent years with somebody and they still don't understand you, or they still appear not to understand you. We also have situations where we talk about the same thing over and over again to our partners, and it's like they're not listening. Do they understand? And sometimes you're saying, am I talking double Dutch? The thing is that when we speak or when we communicate with somebody, we do not realize how many barriers there are to communication. So I'm going to tell you what the barriers are, and then I'm going to try and explain how to overcome those barriers so that you can speak to be understood. Okay, so we have to remember that the universal language is, of course, a smile, which is now hidden by a mask. So we have to smile with our eyes now. But, apart from the physical mask, we all wear masks, don't we? We all have something that we don't feel quite comfortable sharing. And sometimes that shows in our persona, it shows in our responses, it shows in our communication, and we don't even realize it. If you've been hurt, or if you've been had a harsh upbringing, you're going to come over as more impatient, more defensive, more antagonistic, and all of these play out in your communication. Sometimes, something simple as street language. Street language, it appeals to a certain sector of people. It doesn't appeal to another sector. It's like people who speak posh, in quotes. They appeal to a certain type and they alienate another type. People who speak Cockney, they appeal to a certain type and then they alienate another group. And that is how communication is. So when you're talking about speaking to be understood, you have to understand how many differences there are between us, apart from the obvious differences of race, color, and gender. You have to think about the amount of differences that inhibit communicating in a way to be understood. So we have barriers to communication, which I've put gender. Like I said, men are from Mars. We've got race. We've got age. Well, why I put age is because you have different views. People who are in their 80s and 90s, they have a totally different concept to how things are now. In a lot of cases, if they haven't caught up, they will still be talking about lolly and the old times and stuff like that, as opposed to the young people who will be talking about technology and, they have all their little phrases. So that can be a barrier when a young person tries to speak to an elderly person and vice versa. We also have culture as a barrier. You've got the language, you have the accent, and like I said, you have the street versus eloquence, which is limited to certain groups. You have those who are articulate versus those who lack literacy. You have tone. Tone can be very, very isolating, and it can also turn somebody off straight away. So they're not even going to listen to you. You've got those who are condescending and patronizing. You also have body contact. Like I said, in certain cultures, they look you straight in the eye. Like in America, it's considered that you're honest if you can look somebody straight in the eye. But like in certain parts of East Asia, they lower their eyes, and it's seen as a part as respectful. So you have to understand those kind of barriers to communication. If you're expecting somebody from certain parts of Asia to look you straight in the eye, although it is a bit different now, um, you're going to start you're going to start making an assumption or forming a wrong opinion about that person. You've also got silence. Silence speaks, because silence tells you either that I'm hurting, I need attention, I want to say something, but I'm afraid to. And you have to kind of even think about silence as a way of communicating, because some people who find it difficult to speak for whatever reason prefer to use silence and hope that someone will prompt them out of that silence and get a conversation moving. So that's another barrier to communication. But also, it can also initiate communication, because if somebody's silent long enough, they might just get you to say, "Oh, what's wrong?" You see what I mean? You've also got another barrier to being understood is secrets, lies, people who have insecurities, indirect communication. When all of those things are going on, whether it's in you or the other person, you're going to misread signs, you're going to misread signals, you're going to make assumptions because somebody's hiding something, and you're going to draw your own conclusions. What's most important is, are you on the same level? Because it's hard to be understood when somebody isn't on the same level as you. And when I'm talking about level, it could be academic, but I mean, even if two people aren't academic and the two people can kind of reach an understanding just by basically accommodating each other and having an open mind. But a lot of people, if they're not on the same level, that's going to be a barrier to communication. And that is going to prevent an individual from being understood. If somebody comes over, it's like people who might have a stammer. And if somebody has a stammer and you're an impatient person and you're quite eloquent, you might not have the patience to wait out the person who has the stammer. That can cause that person not to be understood or feel as though he's not being understood. So it makes it easier, put it that way, to be understood when you're communicating with somebody who's on your level, same literacy level, because when you're thinking about communicating and being understood, it's really important that you speak in a language that, regardless of who you're speaking to, they can understand what you say. It's like something simple as advertising. When you look at advertising, they are communicating to be understood. Who do they want to understand them? The people that they have representing their product in the adverts. So sometimes they have mixed race, sometimes they have black people, sometimes they have white people, sometimes they have young people, sometimes they have teenagers. But the images that they use is to communicate with you so that you can understand what message they're trying to send and the target that they're trying to reach. So you might just look up and think, "Oh, somebody who looks like me." You might see a black person. If he's with a white woman, you might either switch off, or you might think, "Oh, I'm married to a white woman. Let me see what that product is about." So they're communicating all the time and they're trying to engage you. And they do it without language. They do it without speaking. They do it through images, or imagery, I should say. So there is nothing more disengaging when you're communicating with somebody than somebody who's babbling. Somebody goes on and on and on. And yes, I am guilty. I hold my hands up. I do hope that it's not superfluous. I don't think I repeat myself, but I know I do tend to go on. It's because when I speak about a particular subject, I try to cover all elements of that subject, and it can kind of take me over. So I do acknowledge that I can go over the top. So disengaging when you go on too long, babbling, dithering, superfluous. And there's also not listening. That's another barrier, a way you're not going to be understood if the other person isn't listening, if the other person's switched off, or if they're making assumptions about what you're going to say, if they preempt what you're going to say. You know, a lot of people assume they know what you're going to say and they jump in to rescue you. And, you know, if you're taking too long to explain yourself, they're ready to jump in. Sometimes they want help, sometimes they don't. Sometimes they're thinking, you know, oh, couldn't you give me a chance? I would have got there in the end. But people are impatient. And so when you're speaking to be understood, you have to know the level of that person's engagement. You know, do they want to speak to me for 5 minutes, 10 minutes? How much time have they got? It's really important to know how much time people have got. I think one thing with videos, though, is that if somebody sees a video and they see 20 minutes and that's their engagement, then they're going to watch you for 20 minutes. If they see 45 minutes, they're going to say, forget it. You know, I've watched videos that are about an hour and 50 minutes. I'm not necessarily watching them, physically watching them. But if I'm interested in that speaker, I'll put it and I'll be listening to it while I'm washing or cooking or whatever. So that the duration doesn't really affect me. If I want some quick learning, then I look for something that's like 5 minutes, 7 minutes, 10 minutes. And if it's 18 minutes, depending on how much time I've got, I might say, oh, I'm not going to listen to that. So it's really important when you're trying to engage and communicate properly that you set the time for. It's really difficult because, especially what I do, it's very difficult to know when I'm going overboard. I've had so many people say, oh, your videos are too long. Some of them say they're not too long, they're just right. So I really don't have an idea. I just hope that what I'm talking about is engaging enough so that you're listening it through as opposed to switching off. But anyway, let's not babble. Let's not dither. Okay, so attitude is also when you're thinking about how effective you are or whether or not you want to speak to be understood. Sometimes you can be defensive, and there's nothing more off-putting than somebody who's defensive. And so if you want to be understood, you have to come from a place of openness. You have to be confident and sure about what you want to say. If you want to talk to somebody because you have an issue with that person, you need to let them know, look, I have an issue with this, and I may come over as a bit defensive, but this is the reason why. So you kind of explain your behavior or your attitude so that they're not put off and they have a kind of a pre-warning. If you just jump in with a conversation and you're defensive, you are not going to be understood. You're not going to be engaged with, and they're just going to switch off and they think, oh, that person's neurotic. You know, they're over the top. Okay, you also have people who are quite impatient. That's a barrier to being understood. If somebody's impatient, they're not going to want to listen to what you're going to say, regardless of how you say it. And if somebody is self-righteous, they're not going to listen, regardless of how you say it. You have some people who are narcissistic. You have people who are self-righteous, like I said. You have pompous people. You have arrogant people. If you're trying to communicate with people like them, no matter how you word what it is you want to say, they're not interested. They're more interested in what they want to say and how they want to say it. And as far as they're concerned, what you're talking about is a load of rubbish. Whether it's sensible or not, you do have people like that, and you mustn't allow people like that to make you feel as though you do not know how to speak to be understood. There are some people who make you feel as though you're not understood, and they do it quite deliberately. And somebody asked me if somebody is trying to deliberately antagonize you or wind you up, and you ask them and they say yes, what do you say? It's not a question, it's about knowing that that is their agenda. And then once you know that that is their agenda, you don't play into their you don't play into their their game or whatever it is. You can just switch off and think, okay, I'm not wasting my time. Similarly, if you're trying to explain something to someone and they're making out like you're stupid, or you don't know what you're saying, or you're not saying it right, or they're being pernickety and picking out this word and saying you didn't say that right, and creating all these obstructions. You do get people like that who just sit there and wait for you to make a mistake, and then they jump on it. They don't listen to everything that you've said that's correct. It's like they're sitting there examining what you're saying to see what you say is wrong. And then you're going to be left with a feeling, oh, maybe I don't know how to communicate effectively, when you're communicating with somebody who's defective. They're the ones who are defective because they're not giving you any room for error, and you're not perfect. No one's perfect. So all I'm saying is that there are certain people that you have to be aware of that will make you feel as though you're not communicating to be understood, when they are deliberately creating obstacles to be understood, or make you feel as though you do not have any sense. So everyone is struggling to be understood, to be acknowledged, and that is sometimes our cry. We all want to be understood. It's our deepest need to be understood, whether it's in relationships, whether it's with peers, whether it's with employers or employees. You want to be understood. And I was watching two teenagers today walking, and they were talking about hair. And I was thinking to myself, oh, look how that is what they have in common. They both had braids, they were both similar age, they were both black, and they both dressed similar, and they look so happy walking along the street. And then I thought to myself, it is that similarity that enables someone to be understood, having something in common with someone else. Arguments start because you're striving to be understood. And like I said, you've got some obstinate people and people who deliberately try to antagonize you. There's also where you're not making your needs known. And when you don't make your needs known, sometimes it comes out in a different way. It comes out as defensiveness, it comes out as irritation. And it's because you're not quite sure how to tell somebody what you need. Sometimes we don't feel as though we deserve what we need. Sometimes we think we're not going to get what we need, even if we ask for it. So why bother? And you have all of those dynamics going on when you're trying to communicate to be understood. And sometimes you think, oh, supposing I ask for this and it turns them off. Sometimes it's about our own insecurities. Sometimes there's lots of situations when you want something, or you need something, or you would like something, and you're thinking, oh, I better not say anything. Supposing it turns him off. But that is you. That is your need. That is who you are. And it's a risk you take. But if it's important to you, you need to know where you are with that person. If you're always denying your needs and always denying what is important to you, because you're afraid, whether it's a rejection or abandonment or whatever it is, because you do take a risk when you ask for what you want. But if you don't, you'll never be understood, because what you're actually presenting is a false person. And so when you present a false person to someone, because you're denying yourself of your needs, that person is responding to the false you. And so that you'll never be understood if that's the case. What else is there? Yeah. In conversation, what happens when we think we won't get an opportunity to put our point across? The strategy is we interrupt, don't we? We think to ourselves, oh, I'm not going to get a chance to say what I need to say. So you interrupt or you preempt. And because you're so focused on what you want to say, you're not really listening to what the other person is saying. And we often hear about that. But it is best if you have something to say. If you know you're going to have a conversation with somebody, take a little notebook. When something comes into your head, just write down a note. Let them know that you're writing down something, so you don't forget to tell them at the end, so that they make that allowance for you to say what you need to say. And that way you can focus on what they're saying, and you won't be forgetting what you need to say. I hope it's not a long thing. You have to keep it short, of course. Otherwise, if you're writing something long, you're going to be disengaged anyway. And that's not going to be effective. So, like I said, the universal language is a smile. But in the current status where we are now, our smiles are masked, aren't they? They're masked with masks. That was an onomatopoeia, whatever they call it. So, and it's very interesting. Because I knew I was going to do something on communication. I was in Specsavers this morning, and this woman came by, and she said, "Oh, good morning, ladies," really loud. And it's funny because I was sitting here, and another lady was sitting about 6 feet away, and the two of us looked at each other. We both had on masks, but we looked at each other. We raised our eyebrows in, I don't know whether it was horror or I don't know what it was, but we communicated. And I was thinking to myself, I wonder if she's thinking what I'm thinking. I was thinking, that woman is attention seeking. Why does she have to say it so loud? You're walking through a narrow corridor. There's only two people there. And why do you have to be so loud? Then she started talking about, oh, my husband's in that room. My son's in that room. As if we bloody care. But it was interesting because we all had masks on. We could communicate with the top part with our eyes and our eyebrows. And it was interesting that because she was so jovial and so loud, I'd made an assumption. I think if she just walked past and said, "Good morning, ladies," I wouldn't have made that assumption. We both acknowledged her. But it was the way that we both instantly looked at each other and raised our eyebrows, as if to say. But it's a form of communicating. And we communicated and we understood each other without even saying a word. Communicating to be understood doesn't necessarily need words. And that's why I said sometimes even silence is a form of communication. What else have I got to say? Today, well, when I say today, in these times, methods of communication has changed. And like I was just saying, it's less face-to-face now. It's easier. But the only thing when it's less face-to-face is that it's easier to hide emotions and it's easier to hide pain. And we are more likely to be forgotten. Because what happens is that when you rely on social media or WhatsApp or whatever, and you're not in contact with someone, something could happen to that person and you wouldn't even know. And so that is the scary thing about not being able to communicate face to face or not wanting to communicate face to face. It's kind of sad, really, because a lot of people are in pain and they can hide their pain much easier when they are not communicating in a face-to-face situation. Because when it's on WhatsApp and somebody says, "How are you?" and you can write back, "Oh, I'm fine, I'm great," when you feel like crap, you're not going to get the support that you need. And so it is important that if something is bothering you, that you do explain that to someone. You might feel as though you're offloading, but it really is important. Too many people hold their pain inside and they think it's okay. If it's okay if you're writing about it, you're writing it out, or you have some kind of audio equipment and you speak it out. But if you're holding it in and feeling alone with it and you're not communicating with anyone, that's very, very dangerous. When I think about Ethan, that young 17-year-old boy, I mean, I haven't read the update, but he died. 17 years old. He had all of these followers on Instagram. I don't know how many, but he was very, very up there with numbers. And you kind of think he was somebody who was hiding, I have to say hiding, behind social media. Who was looking out for him? And that's the thing, when people see you as famous, they tend to pay less attention to you. They tend to check up less on you. They assume that because you have on this, you look glamorous and you doing all of these videos and you are looking good and all of that, you're okay. And somebody like Ethan, it's so tragic. I really have to read up how he died because they didn't write it in this morning's paper that I read. Well, the news article that I read on my phone. But, when we're thinking about speaking to be understood, what was he saying through his videos? What was he telling people? How was he communicating to be understood? He was a boy who used to wear female makeup. Well, I shouldn't say female makeup. He was a boy who used to wear makeup, lipstick, all of it. And he looked like a woman, but that was how he used to teach people how to put on makeup. But what was he trying to tell people through his craft that they didn't understand? Even his best friend said she didn't understand. So so many of us, we talk, but sometimes we don't understand ourselves, what we want to say, but sometimes we don't even share what we know. When we're hurting, we don't even share it. And we don't realize the damage it does. So speaking to be understood is so wide. It's so, it is a difficult topic. It is difficult because it means making yourself vulnerable. It means opening up to somebody. It means you have to trust somebody. And we live in a world where people don't trust anyone. And when you have to trust somebody and you're afraid to trust, it makes that person feel vulnerable. But you need to feel vulnerable. You're human. If you've never felt vulnerable, you haven't lived. That's what sometimes being in love does. Being in love, as opposed to loving someone, renders you vulnerable. You open yourself. You're receptive. And you speak. And you have to say to yourself, I don't really care how that person is going to receive this information. I love that person. I'm in love with that person. I need to share this information. And, and 99% it doesn't make a difference. Been holding this stuff in for goodness knows how long, thinking someone's going to judge you, thinking someone's going to share it to the world, and it doesn't even make a difference. You've said it, it's gone through one ear and out the other, you've relieved yourself, and you've spoken. But when you speak, you actually help people to understand you, especially when you speak truthfully and you're authentic. It's really important. People can't understand you unless you communicate. And you realize, even in relationships, the more time goes on and the more someone opens up to you, you get to understand why they behave in a certain way, why they do that, why they behave in this way, why they get agitated in this situation. But it takes that person opening up and talking to you so you can understand why they might be frigid, why they might be cold, why they might be disengaging, why they might be selfish, why they might be antagonistic. You can kind of get a grip when you understand, maybe down the road they'll say, oh, when I grew up, this happened, or when I was in the army, that happened, or when I was so and so, my husband left me or my wife abandoned me. I went home and she wasn't there. You can kind of understand the pain that they're going through. And in understanding the pain, you get to understand when they're speaking. You can have a different kind of viewpoint and you can receive it better. Anyway, as I usually, I go on and on and on and on. Let's see what else. Yeah, I wanted to say this very quickly. When you go to the nail shop, well, I went for a pedicure earlier today, and I was thinking about those people, the Asian people in the nail shop, and I was thinking they don't speak English, but they make sure they learn keywords in order to communicate, in order to keep their business going. So, and I was listening to them, and they would to each other. But when they speak to their customers, it's like they learn these keywords: long, short, round, square, acrylic, gel, color, pedicure, manicure, or both, nails, and extensions. Those are the keywords that they learn. Other than that, they point, they smile, and they do what they need to do to get the job done. So, and they learn all the currency, so they know if it's 20 quid, 30 quid, all of that kind of stuff. So, and they understand, and we actually understand them because they're using enough language for us to understand them. And we speak in a way that they understand. So, in the end, even though they don't speak English fluently, you get your nails done just the way you want them. You get your pedicure just the way you want it, even though the language is very, very limited. And that is what it's about. What is important when you're communicating with somebody? We don't really need to go over the top. We just need to say what's relevant and what's important and keep it concise, even though I'm not following my own example in this video. But anyway, so what do we learn from them? They reassure customers by using a common language. So it's about using a common language, a language that is understood by as many people as possible. It's knowing the language of the market. What is the language that people are using today? It keeps changing. So what is the language of the people that you wish to communicate with? Study what people want. That's really important, because when people are very selfish, it's all about what they want. Once you know what they want, they're more likely to listen to you if you address what their wants first. Repeat to be understood and clarify. Smile to allay frustration or irritation, because that's what those Asian people do. Because when you're kind of thinking, oh, they don't speak, they give you a nice smile and you're just like, oh, all right then. So to communicate to be understood is like reversing all the barriers to communication. Learn as much as possible about the person you're communicating with. Look for similarities. Smiling is important. I mean, of course, if you want to get across a serious point, you mirror the image. of the person you're talking to. And mirroring is very, very key as well. As I said, that I've just realized that. Well, not just realized it, I forgot to put it on my notes. But mirroring, that's very, very effective when you're speaking to be understood. Okay. And when I'm saying mirroring, it's like, you're talking, if the person is sitting down, you're sitting down. If the person's going like that, you more or less do the same. It's not kind of exact mirroring, but you mirror another person's behavior, and they feel comfortable that there's this kind of synergy going on. So that's also important. Remember our humanness. We're all humans. You may need to word things differently according to gender, culture, and race. But like when you're talking to a man, be direct. They don't go all the way around the houses. It's like even something like driving. I was driving with my partner and he goes straight down the main road and up another road. And to me, it's really long. I'll go zoop up one road, zoop down another one, zoop down another one. And as far as he's concerned, he says it's very typical for women to go through different routes to get where they're going from, where men are more direct. But there are women who are more male oriented thought patterns, and they'll do the direct route. But that was just something I want to just throw in there, that when you're speaking to a man, if you want light done, say, listen, I just want the light done. Don't say, don't look at the light and say, oh, that light's not working. They'll just shrug their shoulders. You have to say, will you fix that light? Not even will you. Please fix the light for me. Be direct. Okay. And what do I need to get in order for you to fix that light? So they have everything that they need. Unless, of course, they're an electrician, and then they'll have the parts. What else is there? Yes, so we're talking, you might need to word things depending on culture and race. Like I said, with the Asians, they kind of use only the words that they need. Pleasant disposition and attitude are usually very helpful. Ask if the message is clear or was clarified. Did you understand what I meant by that? Do you want to tell me back so we can see that we're on the same page? I don't want any misunderstanding. Rephrase if somebody looks confused. There are many ways to say something, and sometimes people use superfluous words, or some people use long words, and you can always simplify what you say. It's catering to your audience, making sure you speak in a language that your audience understands, and say only what's necessary and relevant. People switch off when you go on too long, so you probably switched off. Anyway, that's all for now. Bye-bye.